guys, it's me, and today I want to talk about why I decided to go into indie publishing. And I say indie publishing instead of self-publishing because I feel like self-publishing implies that I'm doing everything myself, and I'm not doing everything myself. I have editors that I work with and a cover designer and other things, and I feel like indie publishing just better encompasses this path. So before I get started, I wanted to note that while I'm trying to simplify everything, nothing about this decision was simple. In the effort of keeping this video from being over an hour long, I'm going to try to just stick with the points that directly led to this decision. So as far as I can tell, this kind of whole journey probably started in 2012. So I was 100% on a traditional path, meaning get an agent and a big publisher or bust, and I wouldn't even consider self-publishing anything. I just finished querying for the 4th time. So the particular story I'm talking about is finished novel number 12. I never queried my first novel. The first story I queried was novel number 8, and then I queried number 9 and 10, and then skipped 11. So novel number 12 had vampires in it. And in case you're unfamiliar, 2012 was probably the worst time to be querying a vampire novel. It wasn't impossible to get an agent, but the bricks were stacked up pretty high against me. So even though I only queried agents that specifically stated that they were not against vampires, I still got a lot of blanket form rejections across the board. And of course that was if I heard anything at all. So at the time, that book was the best I had to offer, and even though it was unlikely to go anywhere, I still had hope because I'm a good writer, it was a good story, and it was my 4th novel that I was going into the query trenches with. And I mentioned that because I read a lot of success stories at the time, and 4 seemed to be the magical number when it came to getting an agent. All the success stories that I read had people who were getting an agent with their 4th novel or less. It was probably really stupid to think that way, but there you go. So I kind of fell apart after this. I got on the writing forum and asked for help on how I could pick myself back up again, because the whole experience had left me pretty horribly depressed. And just about everyone on the forum, you know, they were very encouraging, they were very nice, but there were a couple people who said, why don't you just skip the gatekeepers and self-publish? I was against self-publishing out of spite, because I didn't think that helped anything, and so there were a number of people who came to my defense. But when I started to feel better, I did consider polishing up the story and then just throwing it up on my website for free. And I probably would have if I could have gotten the series finished, but I couldn't, so I didn't. And I just forced myself to move on. So after this, I queried 2 more stories around 5 different times, and I had disastrous results. And somewhere around this time, like, hope just kind of died. I had kind of given up on the inside, but I was still plugging ahead like an insane person on the outside. So now we're up to 2014, and I'm queried my 7th novel, and I finally got requests and some of the most flattering comments about my writing that I've ever gotten in my life. However, after several months, the final rejection came, finally, and I proceeded to jump in and out of about a dozen projects over the next year, finishing nothing, being angry, wanting to quit writing, because I was thinking, what kind of good writer had to query more than several times to get an agent? I was quite literally driving myself crazy, but in true insane me fashion, I decided to try one more time. Because I was thinking, if I was going to fail, I was going to fail with something that I was proud of. So between 2014 and 2016, I finished 3 more books. I trashed 2 of them. But then in 2016, I finally wrote something that I was both proud of and excited about. Like, I hadn't been that happy with something that I wrote since that vampire story from 2012, so it had been almost 4 years. So after a lot of editing, of course, I plunged into the query trenches and met with crickets. And honestly, I felt nothing because, yeah, it was that bad and I had just stopped caring. I remember being on vacation when I gave up on that story, and I was sitting in front of the window and I was looking out at this beautiful, like, creek that was filled with, like, ducks and geese and swans, and I remember trying to make myself cry because it's, like, really disturbing when you don't feel anything. In any case, I set the story aside, which was finished novel number 19, and then moved on to the next one. This was around the middle of August. I didn't trash novel number 19 because, like, I didn't trash everything that I wrote, but it was shelved and I wasn't going to do anything else with it. So I remember the day I changed my mind because I had a writing conference the next day. It was Friday, September 9th, 2016. I went to pee, as people do, and as I was sitting there, a thought popped into my head. For whatever reason, I thought it would be a really good idea to self-publish a book of poems, which still hasn't happened, by the way. But that way, I could try out the self-publishing path with something that didn't have any pressure on it, learn the ropes, and then if things continued to suck on the traditional path, I could self-publish and know what I was doing. Of course, the self-publishing only applied to the book of poems. I was still 100% on the traditional path at this point. And I even went to a query panel at the writing conference the next day, and I came back with all these ideas for how I was going to approach the next time I queried agents, from my opening lines right down to my bio. So the next Wednesday, I hadn't made any progress with the self-publishing research because I had no idea what to even look at or where to start. I decided to reach out to a writing friend who had self-published a novella the year before, because I knew that she could help point me into like a more productive direction. And while I was doing all this research, I decided to pull out novel number 19, get some more feedback on it, and then query independent publishers who took uneducated submissions. Because it was like, I was proud of the story, why not try another path to get it published? That said, over the next 10 days, during which I emailed 3 more people that I knew who had self-published, I decided to change course and self-publish my novel instead. I didn't quite change my mind overnight, but it was pretty close. While I was doing research, I just got like really excited about the idea. It felt like the right decision in my gut. It felt right for me, and I was so excited about it. And I even slept great for like 4 months. And that's significant because I have chronic sleep issues, and I never sleep that good for that long. So to me, I didn't need any more proof that I was making the right decision. And really, that's pretty much the whole story. Yeah, I was frustrated with the traditional route, but I had been frustrated for a while. I changed my mind about self-publishing only because it sounded like a good idea. My novel didn't have to get published. I wanted to publish it. I hadn't run out of patience. I have patience, and honestly, I have too much patience when it comes to my writing. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't necessarily do anything different. If I was going to change my mind, it could never happen any other way. I'm too stubborn. But I wanted to mention the patience thing because it's something a lot of people say when they explain why they're choosing the traditional path. They say that they're patient and that they can wait for the right book to come along. Between those 8 stories that I queried, it was 9 years. I stayed on the traditional path through 9 years and over 400 rejections. Like, I laugh when people say they only sent out 25 queries, like that's doing something. Like, they have no idea. So when I say I have patience, like, I have patience. And honestly, I probably would have stayed on the traditional path until I died if it hadn't been for my writing friends who self-published and, didn't combust from the process. It's like there was a little seed that was planted in the back of my mind while they were putting out like these really good, well-edited books with these beautiful covers. And for a lot of them, it was their first decision. They never even considered traditional publishing. And it's like that seed was just in the back of my mind waiting for me to handle that kind of decision. And then when I could, the seed that I didn't even know was there just like sprouted up, seemingly out of nowhere. But I'm not against traditional publishing. It's just, it's not the only way, and I wanted to do something different. And it kind of goes without saying that if you were trying one path for almost a decade, you would probably be ready to try something different too. But there's a story. Hopefully it makes sense. And hopefully it won't be 2 weeks before I put out another video. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about it on this channel, because I've already talked about it on my blog. I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but every time I sat down to film, I was talking for like an hour, and then I didn't want to edit an hour-long video. So yeah, and that's all for today, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.